Thank you to Deanna and Colin and Margaret, the directors of Tree, for having me tonight. And it's a pleasure to be reading with Sarah Peters. And thank you all for coming. Merman. Mornings he emerges from beyond the slick drape, shedding drops and peals of steam, phasing into a prison of porcelain and chrome as if being undreamed, slowly reclaimed by clean lines of manhood. Once out, he winds the towel around his metamorphosed half, the dark undercontinent of his origins, already sinking back into fantasy. Unfogging the mirror to watch himself stand, he scrapes the algae from his jaw, believing it's stubble, having let sink away like a penny tossed into something bottomless, the message he bore from the deeps for his surface self, at which now I can only conjecture. A melt warning, a vengeful cry from the fomenting dump site, an update on the status of dead ancestors, or something in a figurative code aimed specifically at me, e.g., the anglerfish patrols the sea bottom like a vicious conscience. I am guilty of feeling absolved by sleep, without ever thinking closely about what from. What inner criminal's lungs fill with ink and ether each time I go under. Whether what gulps up to daylight is man or myth or monster. I'm very interested, or I've become very interested, and I'm interested throughout this book, and I'm becoming increasingly interested in this idea of the gap between what we say our values are and how we act those values. Something that one of my favorite poets, favorite people, W.H. Auden, conceives of in The Sea and the Mirror as the gap, the unbridgeable gap between what we are and what we are commanded to become. You could ask, of course, commanded by whom? And Auden had his answer for that: God, art, that sort of thing. But there is a gap there often. Just check the labels of our clothing. We can see that gap come right in our face. So this next poem addresses that gap, humorously, I think. It's about being on a resort in Jamaica. It's called 119. I squint back at the hotel from the beach. Its neo-colonial facade cancels a view of anything but itself, its cream stucco immensity. Except it isn't a facade. We build Babylons, fun-time garrisons against the waves furling in from all angles. The erosive sea, seething locals, this region's pleasure weapon, the sun. Under shadow of a grass umbrella at midday, I wonder very little, numbed by knowing this a place a poet risks decommission for even admitting having been. Dry with shame, I wade in and order a Mai Tai, tipping a damp American dollar as we all do, despite our all-inclusive wristbands and no matter our nationality. Lingua franca Washingtonia. Yesterday, Denisha, one of the activities girls, pointed out to me the pendulous droops of unripe sea grapes, clustered rows of chlorophyll orbs just beginning to sugar into purple. 6 dawns a week at the crack of her 14-hour shift, she specters the strand to pluck any ready ones. Of course, I asked my tongue's question, to which she replied, sweet but still bitter, and with a very large pit, which makes sense from trees that gnarl up from hourglass spillage. Now I'm lying 3 rums deep, otter floating with a 4th perched on my sternum, looking up from the shallows at a vast sky portentous with frigate birds, their tails forked like implements of torture. A dread lingers, that one may swoop down and effect its dark piracy upon my touristic soul. With such a range of poisons at my command, how to commit to just one? The chambermaid refills my mini fridge daily with carob, a beer that steals its name from a native Antillean people and their extinct language. I drink it because it's there, the blue and sunburst can slick with cold inverse of sweat, soothing my afternoon forehead apulse with the face palms of the sun gods sloughed off with cane liquor, to which the candied corn soda taste after the crack and hiss provides a welcome, if ill-advised, contrast. It calls to me. At this point in the day, I'm beatific with guilt, like one who gluttons himself until he comes out the other side starving. Up the beach, along the fleshly poolside, past the families idling at the shut door of the all-you-can-eat, along the unjungled path through palm, banana, and traveler's tree to the airy foyer, where when I order a blue Hawaii to take back to my room, the tuxedoed bartender, I shit you not, answers, "Yaman." I duly George him and mount the marble staircase to what the situation demands I call my domicile, collapsing to mattress. After zoning out a spell, I sit up for a sip and notice the red-lettered sticker on the phone, faded to symbolize its advice being so rarely heeded here. In case of emergency, dial 119. 119? Hello? Yes, this is a reverse emergency. I've resorted to vacating the moral north. My sister is getting married. I'm giving her away. I see myself as if from the sand up, callous-souled, politely slavering, essentially a Babylonian. A baby man alone amid a Babylon demanding to be chanted down. So the book is called Questions in Bed, and as Margaret said in her introduction, it has this theme of lying awake, asking oneself questions, worrying perhaps, occupied. And there are 3 poems in the book called Questions in Bed. All 3 of them are 22-line poems in couplets. I don't know that's a lot of 2s. I just thought about that today, 22-line poems in couplets. I think I was kind of going for the sense of dialogue, of call and response. But all of these poems consist of questions. And there are no section breaks in the book. Those poems are evenly spaced out through the book to serve as section breaks. I'm just saying this because often when I'm at readings, I want to know what the poems look like. I have this, and I say this when I read aloud, like someone reads and I want to go up there and say, give me that. Just let me take a look at that for a second. Hold on. So that's why I'm telling you that. Here's one of them. Questions in Bed. I wonder who's at risk to lose themselves tonight. Who fears or should the long pall of schism natural dark brings with it? To what act or happening do those amped sirens fling their ululations? What newly phantom damp patch of pavement Harkins their dispatch? Was it someone's out of character axe frenzy? Am I next? If just above my breath I whisper, fire, Could that help? Do they sound to you like they're getting closer, faintly loudening like succubi scenting male fear? I fail to tell my birds apart anymore. Are they cops, ambulance, or some emergent Reaper response team, like Ghostbusters? Isn't urgency an egg, always spawning new crack squads? Tell me, are these questions careening off the ceiling with any force? Or is there someone upstairs at least, absorbing them through itchy feet? That last little bit, I think, harkens to the idea of God. And I wanted to share something that happened to me in the classroom the other day. We were talking about Graham Greene's novel, The End of the Affair, which is a really good novel. It has a lot of interesting things to say about God. And the narrator of that book, Maurice Bendrix, doesn't believe in God at the beginning because he thinks that if he believes in God, he has to love God. But by the end, he believes in God. He says, okay, God, I believe in you. I believe in you in order to hate you. I believe in you in order to have somewhere to direct my hate, right? And one of my students said, why does he think that he has to love or hate God, right? Couldn't he just believe in God but not have to be so extreme? And I thought that was very funny because then it made me think, we had a good laugh about this, it made me think like, yeah, I believe in God, but I could take him or leave him, I totally believe it. I believe it all, but like, who cares? That doesn't really relate to the poems that I'm going to read, but it does, but only obliquely. These concerns, and so I think there's a lot in this book that's concerned with the specter of belief and with being unwilling to be indifferent to that idea. I thought that was great. Yeah, why can't you just believe in God but not really care? Yeah, that's right. Give him a poke, right? Like him, poke him, share him. I'm not on Facebook. The first third of the book ends with a sequence of 10 poems called Chase Sequence, which is concerned to portray life itself as a question of pursuit. And, pursuing happiness, pursuing love, pursuing, maybe God, pursuing something to believe in, that sort of thing. So I'm going to read the first 2 poems in that, without much pause between them. So this is the proem. It's called How It Must End, the Chase Sequence. The shift of evasive shoulder blades under shirt, the glint of the receding bumper in the sun, the license plate numbers fading like a trip down the eye chart, the tip of the tail as it slips at last into the bush, the polka-dotted monster laughing out its heart from its hiding place, escaped from me again. Born to learn to wear loss with winningness, to smile and shake my wishful head, jostling my skull-bound wishes like standers on a lurching train, who quickly straighten, undeterred from their destinations. Born to learn not to navigate, but to be drawn, pulled toward the ever-magnetic north of forward, the vanishing slit in the morrow. Post-religious, but spiritual because who isn't? I prove my devotion by chasing it like a tail, chasing an escaping faith, a game of stripes and tigers, catch as catch can't. This motion proves me by pursuit. Daily without fail I spy it lurking in ambush, wearing a mask of me. We chase, therefore we flee, therefore we can't not be. It's a sapphic rom-com we inhabit, a sweet bitter love-in destined to end at the valley's summit, to climax in the moments just after our gasping quarry slumps back in size. I think we've lost them. And then they let their eyes neglect the mirrors and relax just long enough for us to drench them in our headlights before their urgent engine revs them gone, deliciously gone. After their escape, the air will throb with the steady slowing of pulses, ours and theirs, and even those of the imagined audience, always in vicarious pursuit. Impossible love. As they watch, the air will hang heavy as a bronze bell left unrung, and every lung in earshot will swell and fill, their bodies both scared and desperate to move. So yeah, when I said that about Graham Greene and God not having to do with my poems, that was completely wrong. Actually, I forgot what poem I was reading next and forgot what was in it. This is the second one. From that point forward, the sequence pursues a kind of life cycle. That is, it goes into prehistory and then has a poem about sperm and then about childhood and adolescence and so on. This is the prehistory poem. It's a kind of speculative prehistory. It's called Ahistoric Man. To hunt for food and strike for flame and inhabit the skins of kill became the basic human skills at some point between the descent and the building of towns with names, before the games of government, but after the straying of will towards windows of adornment, around the time the toxins came. When suddenly love wasn't thighs, and meat didn't have to be charred, and life didn't have to be hard, at least always, when now and then we could slip through roomfuls of friends, having downed 5 glassfuls of stars, and light at last in the backyard, navigating tiki torch fires to drink in one another's eyes. Starring everyone. There's a calm one detects in reproductions of ancient hunting expeditions, the jaws and eyes of men intent in knowing that the only balm for hunger is alive, a scent they track beyond intoxication to full stomachs and humble tents, the sated body's silent psalms. Is our sapience a measure of our insatiability? Or in mere decades will it be revealed that everything we chased, every empty chest we treasured for golden hearts that never raced, outstripped our human pedigree, attuned our tongues to fewer tastes, and museum-cased our pleasures? I don't always want what I chase. The skin of women gives me clues. My heritage forbids the blues. The Protestant work ethic sucks. I'm lashing out with my embrace, hoping hard to soften luck. The best ideas leave a bruise, said the comet as it struck. I'm digging up a better place. So that one ends on kind of a utopian or pseudo-utopian sentiment, creative destruction or whatever. I'm digging up a better place. I'm going to read a new one now that's my first very brief foray into dystopian poetry. I use this word in here, Wilsonic, by which I mean it's an adjective meaning having to do with Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys. And I was thinking about this in terms of how I would introduce this poem and what I'm up to here. And I was thinking about how in the age of global warming, if what scientists say is going to happen happens, the Beach Boys are going to become very sad music. That is, the first Beach Boys compilation is called Endless Summer. That would become darkly ironic, wouldn't it? And the Beach Boys are all about cars. right? Fun, 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 till the daddy takes the T-bird away. She's real fine, my 409, little Honda. So, fossil fuel, CO2 emissions, endless summer. So I think that someone, maybe me, if I can gain the requisite skills, should make a dystopian film that is entirely soundtracked by the Beach Boys. Where someone is looking out, say, from the bluffs over the Ottawa River, over the desert that was once the Gatineau Hills, weeping while Fun, Fun, Fun plays. That's what I think. So this, that's what I should have written the poem about. This is like this is a test drive for that poem. And it envisions a world in which people are divided by what clothes they wear. Of course, that happens in Brave New World and so on. It reminds me, I want to go into this Jerry Seinfeld bit where he talks about how they've got it right in the future because everyone wears a uniform. So, never mind. It's called The End of Fashion. The End of Fashion. In search of unchanging vogue, after all fur was faux, between emplotment and spontaneity, the sweet spot, silken robes dredged in mud honey, Wilsonic endless summer. That breathable bodysuit becomes her, and him, and her, but not them. UV-resistant muumuus for the plebs. Sleeve la revolution, the social event of our season. Next year in velour again. Abolished belts cannot be loosened. Common sense dictatorships uniformly decree. I style myself into we. Oh, dropped my set list. I was saying to people that actually I used to come to punk rock shows here when I was like 15, 16 years old and take a whole bunch of caffeine pills. And I don't think I said that, but that was our first foray into recreational drugs. Back in high school, we'd take caffeine pills and come to the Saw Gallery. So I felt if I had had a marker and stuff, I felt that I would have put my set list on the ground in marker, right? And taped it down. Because we used to love if we were the one who got that set list at the end of the night, that was great. This is a poem about marriage. The last poem ended with the line, I style myself into we. I guess the most common way we style ourselves into we is by getting married. It's called Prenuptials. It's broken into 3 sections, which I will indicate by a pause. Prenuptials. In long blue rooms sequestered off by portable walls, our lives are drawn for analysis in vials of stoppered pulses. Don't let them take too much, you quipped. But less the taking, it's the glimpse. The red flash as the nurse turns away that whispers, love isn't limitless. Nor does it prick without compunction. When it comes your turn, I muster every ounce of sang-froid my relict reptilian brainstem affords, and force myself aversionless as the tourniquet purples your vein for puncture. Your nails barely plumb my palm's cushion as the tip pushes. And the beaker drinks. 4 pink crescents fluoresce and fade, blood moons antiseptically eclipsed. With our new thresholds freshly cottoned shut, we reconfirm our names at the reception desk and exit. 2 fewer tests left to take. prepared to wait our lives for the results. This is another one from the chase sequence, but it was published kind of as a standalone poem, and I think it works that way. Also, in deference to my own desire to see poems and know what they are, this is a Villanelle, which you would have been able to tell anyways, but I'm saying it. It's called On Togetherness, so it continues the theme of the previous one. Togetherness means I want you alone, to be there when you're really by yourself, to really be myself when I'm alone. The benefits of love are widely known, but solitude contributes much to mental health. Togetherness means I want you alone. You'll likely greet this poem with a groan, as though it constitutes an act of stealth. But I just want to be myself when I'm alone. By whom I do not mean the chump I loan to dinner parties and affairs of wealth, but the one who keeps it all together when alone. I want to make myself a man of stone, animated by the breath of love itself, the solid me you hope I am when I'm alone. With you, I sought a definition of my own. And finally, I know just what the hell togetherness means. I want myself alone. I want us both to be myself when I'm alone. That's not really what I think. That's another thing about this book, and I'm quite adamant about this. I guess I'm quite adamant about this in poetry in general, that gap between the speaker and the poet really must be maintained. And that gap is not taken nearly seriously enough when I see reviews out there and so on. I really want it to be taken more seriously. I think that's one of the reasons that I started writing reviews. I wanted that gap to be taken more seriously. It's kind of like that gap that I talked about earlier, the unbridgeable gap between what we are and what we are commanded to become. There's something there that is akin to the gap between poet and speaker. I feel like I'm cultivating a really serious vibe up here. Let's, there's something about it. It's like dark up here. I don't know. I feel like we need some like a bass player or something like that. This is another of the Questions in Bed poems, so I'll be reading 2 of the 3 of those. This is the second last poem I'll read. Questions in Bed. Is silence plausible? Could I describe right now, for instance, amid the ambient hum of myriad appliances, distant car noise, and my own inner whispering, as truly silent? What of the assassin wind drawing its incomparably long blade across the hollow of the moon's throat? How long have I mistook this lunicide for peace? Even those country nights under riddles of pinprick stars, was that unpolluted hush in which I basked actually the spheres grinding at frequencies pitched above the ear directly to this unreposing seat of love and motion? A kind of highfalutin booty music? In calling dancing getting down, from what height do we envision ourselves descending? Must the rugs up there remain uncut? Is the total absence of sound perhaps exactly as far beyond our grasp as paradise? Does even snoring hymn that dashed hope? The single log across the hushing gully, sawn in half? This is the last poem I'll read. It's a new poem. I've never read this in front of people before. Only a few people have even read it, actually. So it's a bit of a test. It kind of picks up the thread towards the end of the last poem, though, about paradise. And I think that this poem has a lot to do with knowing, because I wrote it in the summer just before I moved to the U.S., knowing that I was leaving Canada. And it arises out of that. It's called Lostlandia. The national anthem's a strange genre. Pomp straining to conjure a circumstance under which a love song to a shaded patch on the map isn't just sad, a train wreck of cymbal crash and flaccid crescendo. More often mouthed than sung, by ant-panted rows of school kids or sports fans restless not just to get on with the lesson or game, but to forge away from native land up to an anthemless plateau. The hush that swells more so in us the bigger the crowd we mull among. The inverse of how shadows tell louder tales, the silenter the room becomes. Her stomach's rumbling accompanies the intercom as the apple on her teacher's desk quivers imperceptibly with the anthem's every tinny rum-pum-pum. A mundane analog of how paradise's tree, shaken by divine breath, might have felt the fruits tug ever so slightly at its twig ends, but not fall. Nothing rotted in the clover at its foot. He tugs at his too long jersey sleeves with sweaty palms, and if asked, would be hard-pressed to explain the flutter in his gut at every shift of luck doled out by the capricious gods of game to those whose pelt he dons to join their pack, becoming between whistle bursts an alpha version of himself, faster, stronger, richer, a citizen of promise. My songs, too, though they consist mostly of stuff I force myself to wrench from what wants, if I'm honest, to stay silence, and so likely don't deserve the name of song, aspire to a kind of anthemhood. Not pompously, or so I hope, but rather out of undirected love, as though my soul were just a mostly empty hold. Not even mine, really, but merely a vast enclosure with a spot of me somewhere off-center, like a teacherless classroom with nothing written on the board and one kid in it, or an arena with a single fan sitting in the dim, watching blank ice. Oh da-da-da, oh da-da-da, oh dumb. It will take a lot of us to build these sounds a home. Thank you.